Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today we're speaking with Purna Virji. Purna, it's great to have you on the show.
But it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm really chuffed to talk to Purna. She's really a guru in the space. We're going to talk to her today about all of these amazing things that she's working on. How do I introduce Purna? She is an author. She is also a creator of an incredible newsletter that I don't know if you've seen called the Agent-Led Growth Newsletter. You have to check that out. She is an expert on AI commercialization, and if you are working in any business today, anywhere, and you're not thinking about AI commercialization, well, call Purna, but clearly it's at the center of business as we know it. She's a go-to-market narrative positioning and customer adoption for AI products expert. Purna, thank you so much for coming on the Uncaged show today. I'm really excited to talk with you. Before we get into all of the amazing things that you're working on, tell us a little bit about your background at LinkedIn and Microsoft, etc.
Well, Bant, I've been in digital marketing and products for about 2 decades now. I spent the last 11 years at Microsoft and LinkedIn combined. And I think what the through line through my whole career, between working at startups and then at the mega corporations, has been just translation. So what I tend to do is I spend my whole career sitting between emerging technology and people trying to figure out what actually matters. And then whether it was search, social, or AI and AI monetization products, like my pattern has been the same. Like when technology moves faster than people, how do I bring the people along and make sure that we're translating all of the great ideas into things that people are going to want to care about, adopt, and pay for?
Now, Purna, I mean, you are truly a thought leader in the space. I know you speak at conferences, you're a keynote speaker on topics related to AI commercialization. You're an author, Purna's book, High Impact Content Marketing. Please take a look at it. Also, her newsletter. Really an incredible newsletter, Agent-Led Growth. Please take a look at that as well. But tell me a little bit about the things that you're thinking about right now. I mean, you are living this stuff.
I am. So like most recently at LinkedIn, I also led our applied AI work stream that we had. So in addition to being a sort of creative and content consultant at LinkedIn, and I think the biggest thing when I talk to companies of all shapes and sizes, whether it's the Fortune 50 to the highest growing startups, has been just what can AI really do, or how do I measure the right impact that AI is having? And then why are people not adopting AI in droves? Because the capability is so smart, it's getting better, it's the smartest it's ever been. And there is still this lull. And so I find that it really comes down to a couple of different areas that's where I tend to home in on. So one is that people, and there's really three things that I focus on. So the first one is, where can AI really make a big difference to an organization? So people either tend to just go by tools, or like everyone does their own thing. There's such uneven levels of AI fluency within companies, or it is the senior leadership saying you must go and use this tool and let it happen. And so that really doesn't tend to work. What people are missing is like the step above, which is this organizational workflows, which how can I really apply AI, and what are the right places where AI can help, and how can I make it consistent across my team? And so that's a place that I live at. The second place that I live at is, well, how do I really measure the impact that AI is having? For so long, people have tended to just be like, well, look at this AI, it saves hours. Positioning statement from AI companies as well is like, look how fast we are, look how clever the model is, look what it can do. But then if I realize that if we as employees are going to our CFOs and senior leadership and saying, hey, I could do this 20% faster now, or I saved 8 hours a week, leadership isn't going to be like, oh, how clever, and like pat you on the head. What they're going to say is like, well, I guess we need fewer people. So we're all writing the layoff memo for ourselves, isn't it? And I'm like, well, you have to
Well,
actually.
it's such a great point. I feel, there's two sides of the narrative early on with AI. One that when I look at it was if I go back maybe, let's say go back about 7 years when
No.
AI was, people that were playing in it. I did a PhD in the space. A lot of people were talking about all the amazing things it could do. And they were very fearful, like the Terminator, but they were also, the people that were working in the field were very excited. And it was a narrative of abundance. This idea of like, well, we're going to be able to do so much more. And, you're going to have these tools that will make you be able to do things that you would never have been able to do on your own. How amazing is that? It's interesting how I think over time, people are shifting that narrative, not really fully grokking it. I recently did some research and, I did a study in 2019 asking people that were in marketing professionals kind of what their knowledge base was of AI at the time. And you had kind of a real split back then between people that were like super excited about it and others that were very fearful of it. But the reality is that very few of them actually really knew what it was.
Yeah.
They didn't, they just didn't know what we were talking about. Fast forward to today, and I'm actually finding that when I speak to marketers, they think they know what it is.
Yes.
But they don't know what it is. So they've shifted from not knowing to now they think they're experts, even though they haven't even scratched the surface. And I think you mentioned one of the most critical points, which is we've all dabbled and played, but how you actually make that organizational change, how you get those teams to work together, that's a whole nother level. And if you can crack it, oh my God, right? The benefits are incredible.
It is, because ultimately, like, AI isn't just there about efficiencies. What it can do is it can make you much more effective, right? It's the whole difference with saying that I used AI to crank out 50 new blog posts, or using AI to say like I created blog posts that increased my pipeline by 15%, right? And
Correct.
that's what you can use AI for. Like isn't that the Goodhart's law that said if the measure becomes the target and then it like no longer is effective. So if you measure the wrong thing, you will take the wrong steps as well. And which is why where I come back to, or my big passion area is AI companies. If we can do better, because not if you're always going out there and talking about, look at my AI, it's so cool, it can do this advanced thing, it can save you time, you're doing yourself no favors. You sound like everybody else because every AI company is like beating the same drum. But two, you're not connecting the dots between where human nature is. You're not keeping in mind that in fact the reason that adoption isn't happening isn't because we're resistant to it. It's because it's not really clear on how or where it can make my day-to-day better, or will it come in, all the human fears that exist.
Here's an interesting question. I'd be curious your take on this. So McKinsey came out with a study last week that talked about how kind of a 9-month normal product cycle could be condensed down into 2 weeks now, if you utilized kind of machine learning tools correctly. That's in and of itself, that's a fascinating statistic. However, you and I both know rolling out a product requires so many different groups to coordinate, to be on the same page, etc. And I really wonder if companies like a Procter and Gamble, like the big players, whether they can get out of their own way here. Like, they're so set on that kind of annual and semi-annual planning cycle. Like, how do they break that and go into, can you imagine if a Procter and Gamble goes on a 2-week product sprint? They're rolling out, 24 products every year? That would be incredible.
It
you
would
know?
be, but then at the same time, it's too much for human nature. Like just
Correct.
because the machine can doesn't mean it should. But what we can do is if you, as a product team, can roll out and build a new product in 2 weeks, that's awesome. All that time that you saved, use it to better understand your audiences, use it to better figure out your distribution plan, use it for different things that will make people want to adopt it faster. So just because you're saving time, what are you doing with that time that you saved, which is a big thing that people are missing out or not talking about enough. Because what's ending up happening is, oh, I saved 8 hours a week. What just happens with that time? I'll put it in email, I'll put it in more meetings or just
Yeah.
more red tape. It's not more productive. So it's like you can use it to do different things. You can use it to build capabilities. I was talking to a friend of mine who works at an agency, and she's like, oh, she was so fed up because she was trying to work with her data analyst team to run this incrementality test, and her analytics teams were just swamped, and so they said, come back next month, and it kept happening. And she was like, well, you know what, I sat down, I took all this data, I fed it into AI, I had it sit next to me, and I had it just talk me through it, and it took her like a week, it took her 2 weeks, so she felt like it trusted it enough to maybe do a mini test, and like she shifted a little budget, and actually she saw a big win. She saw her CAC over her customer acquisition cost, blended CAC go down, which was amazing, right? There's all these things that will give you these abilities that will give you a competitive advantage that's sustainable too.
Yeah.
So if we think about what we want to do as a business, what affects the bottom line, as I always say, think like your CFO, start from the bottom line and then work your way backwards. As a company, when you're adopting AI, when you're applying AI internally, so that way it's much more strategic, it's more cohesive, that there should be a plan for, there's 50 different tools now. Like there's no dearth of tools, there's no dearth of AI capabilities. There is a big gap in people knowing exactly what to use, how to connect the dots, knowing where, understanding even governance of the AI and the data. Like, can I put personally identifiable information, PII, in this tool? Oh no, I can't. But how do I take that? So it takes a little bit more, like it's the half operations, half creative strategy to get this done. And then what product marketers and product teams can do is, again, build this kind of positioning and narrative that will just make it so easy and so obvious for people to be like, oh, now I know exactly how to use you. Now I know what to do. Now I know how to report on it and make the case. So it looks super, super successful.
Yeah. I often kind of think that getting executives, getting business to adopt new processes and new ways is highly the time needed and the budgets and the focus to train on an ongoing basis and to implement is often, I guess, maybe people, the promise sounds better than the reality can be in the short term. I mean, my head of product often reminds me, he said, listen, Bant, if we go to most companies, there are a lot of executives still not knowing how to use Excel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if that's the case, getting them to embrace utilizing something like a Claude on a regular basis or applying it to run out agentic solutions, you realize that maybe they're kind of thinking they can just manage it, And that's an interesting challenge. What would you say? Because you highlighted, maybe they're not moving as fast as you would like. What are some of those things we could remove to get them to embrace the reality faster?
There's generally 3 things that I recommend, because I'll say, like, if we think about it, so let's say when we move from maps to the GPS, we didn't instantly trust the GPS. We watched it reroute, we watched it go through traffic, it went through an arc, and now we can't live without them. The same way with search engines, when they came out, like, oh, this from Alta Vista to Google to, Ask Jeeves, all of that, we learned to trust them by looking at the results, comparing. We learned to trust even Excel spreadsheets because we could key in and look at the formula. So what I always say is that have your AI almost show its work. Like if you're building an agent, have it show its work. So something that I had built recently just to play around was like a customer listening agent. Like we did a listening session and I got it and I'm like, listen, I'm going to use it to query it to get quotes or find things that I want from this listening sessions. I'm like, make sure that you're always giving me that this is an exact quote and where you're putting it from. Tell me when you're paraphrasing. If you're not sure, put not sure. Like you can tell the AI to tell you to show its work, and then when it can, you'll trust it a little bit more. Like you'll know where it fails. So
Purna, you're making me so happy to hear this. These are exactly the same types of things that I care about. Maybe because I come from a bit of an academic background, but I always really want to know like where are the footnotes. I really want to understand the original sources, and really kind of getting it to monitor that stuff can be quite helpful for sure. Yeah.
100%. And then the other thing you can do now, if you've ever worked with kids or had kids of your own, you know that sometimes if you want them to eat the vegetables, you want to involve them in the cooking of the vegetables. Or at least that would work with my son when he was little. If you can let people have some say over if they're having to use agents, for example, you can be like, hey, can you let it set some kind of rules? Like, oh, don't spend more than X without alerting me, or when you run this report, like alert me here. Like find some ways that the human can be in the loop, and every human might have a slightly different comfort level for where they want to be in the loop. And you can also design where the human should be in the loop. So it's finding those spaces, building that comfort, like letting people be a little bit involved in where they use it, how they use it. And then the third thing is just showing them the before or after, the actual benefits. So if there's more, this is where leaders should also model the behavior. Like very often it is what I say, not what I do. But when you can have your leaders being like, oh, I'm using, a Copilot cowork to go and create the slide deck for myself. Like I took this raw data, I fed it into, Copilot cowork, it spat out a perfectly designed deck in our template. Then that sort of gives inspiration to others that they should go out and test it. So if there's have the leaders like model the change they want to see, but also have one person responsible for like, this is different sections. Oh, I'm pulling all of my, don't just trust, for example, your last click attribution from one place. Like take, if you're spending PPC, for example, or paid social on Meta versus Google ads versus Microsoft ads versus LinkedIn ads, like they all have different ad platforms. All of the data lives in those individual silos, but your customers could overlap. So could you pull some of the data? Could you run, is there a function that you could build in the middle that takes it and looks at it, right? Identify the spots, tell people where it should go, tell people what good looks like. It's very, very simple, but a few more enablement over time, like in the flow of people's work, would be super, super helpful to build that as well.
I can tell you're passionate about this space, but tell me where that passion comes from.
So I've always loved it. I've always been that person who is like, well, let me see what's coming. Can I connect dots and spot patterns? Like that's been my superpower since I was a kid. In fact, 2015, like at Microsoft, when I was seeing what Xiaoice, which was the chatbot that was so popular in China, was doing, and Cortana was coming, I'm like, wait, we're going to have voice search, and voice is going to change how we search. And I was talking about voice search from like early 2016. And then when I'm like, oh, all these chatbots came out, or then you could search with pictures. I'm like, wait, visual search is going to be a thing. It's so funny. Like I've always been that person that loves to spot patterns and think about the second and third order effects. So
yeah,
I was a former journalist as well. So perhaps that's where it come from. I'm just incessantly curious. I'm like, love business, and I love especially like the marketing and ads business. And so if I look at this, I'm like, well, how will it change how we all act, and what does it actually mean for the business, and what needs to happen? Like that's my fun daydreaming. Like if I'm sitting there, that's what I sit and think and enjoy. And then how do I put the story together to make
I love it. I love it. We need people that can kind of bring those connections together, because I often think that the media does a very poor job of it somehow. That
yourselves, like if it leads, as they say, as a former journalist. So it's what makes headlines is people saying that AI is going to replace all of you tomorrow. That's what's going to make the headlines because it's sensational and it's going to make people want to read. But that's not the reality. It's not. We're going to look beyond the hype to see what's really happening and what practical steps need to be made.
Purna, I know that you're speaking some places soon. Tell me a little bit of all the places that we can find you and keep in touch with you.
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm a very proud ex-LinkedIner now, but forever LinkedIn and Microsofty. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Purna Virji. I'll be the opening keynote at SMX Advanced in Boston in June. And then I'll also be at International Search Summit in New York in June as well. And then if you're going to be in Rome in October, I'll be there at the SERP Summit. So those are a few places that I'll be out there. And Digital Summit Philly as well in August. So
excellent. I know also the other things would be really kind of subscribing to your newsletter, Agent-Led Growth.
Yes, Agent-Led Growth is, I'm so excited the response that it's received as well. And it's just where I put in all of those thoughts that I'm thinking about. And it's always 3 steps ahead. So definitely sign up. It's on LinkedIn as well, no charge.
Excellent. Well, please take a look at that. Purna, it's been amazing to have you on the UNCAGED show today. We've been speaking with Purna Virji. We've been talking to her really about machine learning and the commercialization of AI. And I would say that it's, we've moved past this thought of, oh, isn't this a clever, shiny object? And now we're seeing literally trillions of dollars, massive infrastructure projects. Yesterday we heard the announcement of the quantum computing play, which it will impact this area. Anyone has looked at these data centers that are going in across the country. This is really all about the infrastructure for this next wave. And trying to figure out how we actually tell this AI story and commercialize it so that it actually impacts the way that we build operations and do business is going to be critical. And there's nobody better out there than Purna Virji. So Purna, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Ben, for having me, and thank you all for listening.
Cheers.